Hello and welcome to today's webinar, New Ways of Working with ITIL4 and Atlassian. My name is Teresa and I'll be moderating the webinar. Today's presenters are Akshay Anand and Paul Buffington. Akshay is a product ambassador at Axelos, working on the development of new guidance and research within the ITSM portfolio. He was also one of the chief architects of ITIL4. We also have Paul Buffington, who is a principal solutions engineer at Atlassian who focuses on helping customers redefine the shape of modern ITSM.
Thanks, Teresa, and thank you once again for allowing me to talk about ITIL4 with all your customers and users. Hi everyone, my name is Akshay Anand. I am the ITIL product ambassador here at Axelos. Axelos is the company who manages the ITIL product. We publish the guidance and the exams and work with training providers around the world and lots of other interesting things. You can find me online on Twitter at Blowboy. You can certainly find me on LinkedIn as well. And I'm happy to connect with each and every one of you. Just to send me a note telling me why you're trying to connect with me so that I can distinguish you from the people who randomly find me online and just click connect without any sort of explanation or context. Before I go a little bit into what ITIL4 is about, I thought I'd just take a brief moment to explain what ITIL is and what it isn't, just so we're all starting from the same page. ITIL is the most widely adopted guidance for IT service management in the world. So a few things to focus on there. The first is that its focus is on the management of digital IT services, not on the management of digital IT technologies. And as a result, ITIL has always been technology agnostic, and indeed it's also been sector agnostic. So whether you're working in financial services or pharmaceutical or manufacturing, the concepts that ITIL talks about are applicable regardless of what sector you're working in. ITIL is also scalable all the way from startups to large multinational corporations. I've seen small teams of even a single individual, but 5 or 6 people using some of the concepts of ITIL to get a handle on some of their work. Equally, I've worked in organizations which have 150, 200,000 employees, or if not more, around the world who use ITIL to manage a lot of their digital and IT services. Since its inception, ITIL has gone through 3 major updates. The latest one is ITIL4, which we just released the first publication in February of 2019. Axelos, the company that I work for, are the custodians of ITIL. Axelos is a joint venture between Capita, a private corporation, and Her Majesty's government. And Axelos was spun out of Her Majesty's government back in 2014. So what are the challenges that ITIL4 is trying to solve? Well, on the screen here, you will see 4 very commonly found anti-patterns or bad behaviors, if you will, that are very common in our industry today. Watermelon SLAs, which are green on the outside but red on the inside, indicators that whilst service provider organizations think they're doing a great job, the customers are really unhappy. There's a misalignment between outcomes that customers want and outputs that providers are delivering. We have a very join the dots approach to often implementing ITIL. ITIL, as are many other best practice frameworks, including DevOps and Agile or BRMI and others, they aren't implemented, they're adopted. They have to be contextualized, they have to be adapted and then adopted. We find a lot of practitioners who have a join the dots approach. You start here and then the next step in your journey is over there and the next step is over there, rather than allowing for the emergence of a unique path that's more suited to the organization. Maturity improvement programs can help, especially if a company is starting with nothing. But as you start to become more mature, these improvement initiatives start to yield less and less return for the same amount of investment. And so often they become vanity projects, so that somebody can say, well, I improved our maturity from a score of 3 to 4, and therefore I deserve my bonus. And the last is that single silver bullet mindset, or that dogmatic mindset that there can only be one framework that will help the organization solve the problems. It's very tempting to think that way, but you have to understand that these frameworks emerge to solve problems in a specific context. ITIL emerged to help solve the British government's issues around how to standardize the management of IT services. DevOps emerged to help organizations understand how to foster greater collaboration, which in turn would yield greater flow of value through software increments from development into technical operations. They're not trying to address the same thing. They're seeking to achieve the same goal, but from different angles, but they work in conjunction. But yet we find too many organizations hoping to pick the one framework that they can bet the farm on and hope that that one framework will solve all their problems. And so at the start of the ITIL4 development journey, we articulated 6 design principles that would go on to help us make very difficult decisions. The first is that the architecture of ITIL had to be modular. This is going to allow us to make updates to different parts of ITIL at different speeds as the need may arise. The core publications, which currently plan to be 6 books, is going to be as lean as possible. ITIL Foundation, which we launched in February of this year, is only 200 pages. And that's a radical departure from previous versions of ITIL. It needs to be as practical as possible. We want people to be able to read the book or attend a class and immediately start applying what they've learned, rather than being reliant on a consultant coming in and telling them how to do something, rather than having them take a lot of time trying to figure out how to contextualize ITIL, or rather than having them think that ITIL only requires a certain type of tooling or so on. ITIL itself has to be very practical. It needs to be evolutionary, which is to say that we recognize people who have invested in ITIL across the years, and we need them to understand that they're still part of the world that we're talking about, but at the same time, we want to show them the way forward. It needs to be collaborative. Now, I have a slide in a different deck that showcases some of the numbers and how we went about asking people to contribute. But as of February 2019, in our research and development forums, which are available to the public, we have about 3,000 people who are answering questions, taking part in surveys, even reviewing materials that we publish in draft form for sort of a consultation period. Out of those 3,000 people, about 160 were willing to sign NDAs because we have materials that we can't make public until the time of release. So these 160 people are actively authoring, reviewing the materials that are being authored, penning papers, writing blog posts, and so on. And it needs to be flexible. We need to be able to show how ITIL can integrate and support and work with other frameworks, whether they're established frameworks like IT4IT or ISO or COBIT, as well as emerging frameworks where while some of the big principles might be stable, a lot of the finer how-to bits and pieces are still evolving. And here I'm referring to agile software development, DevOps, NoOps, serverless, etc. There are a couple of concepts in ITIL4 that I'd like to highlight. The first is adapt and adopt. Contextualizing the guidance of ITIL is key, because what works for one company might not necessarily work for another. And so the architecture of ITIL, we hope, allows companies to understand how to first adopt basic and universal concepts, but then also how to contextualize that. And we hope to provide a lot of case studies and supplementary guidance to talk about how to contextualize ITIL either for your team, your company, or your industry. The other key focus for ITIL4 is the importance of culture in service management. Cultural change is often the biggest barrier to success, not just in service management, and we need to talk about what a service-oriented culture looks like across all levels of the organization. One of the key